Mark had always been a hard worker, the kind of man who prided himself on doing everything he could to take care of his family. He believed that providing for them meant long hours at work, skipping lunches, and coming home late when everyone else was already asleep. It wasn't that Mark didn't love spending time with his wife, Emily, or their 2 children. It was quite the opposite. He adored them more than anything in the world. But somewhere along the way, life got busy, bills piled up, and responsibilities grew heavier. To Mark, working harder seemed like the only solution. And so, day after day, he poured every ounce of energy into his job, hoping it would make their lives better. On this particular morning, Mark woke up earlier than usual. The alarm clock blared its shrill tone, jolting him out of a restless sleep. He rubbed his eyes, feeling the familiar weight of exhaustion pressing down on him. His body ached from countless hours spent sitting at a desk, staring at spreadsheets, and answering emails. Still, he forced himself out of bed, kissed Emily lightly on the forehead, she barely stirred, and headed off to another long day at the office. The drive to work was uneventful, just like every other day. Traffic crawled along at a snail's pace, giving Mark plenty of time to think about how much he missed being home. He imagined his kids laughing as they played in the backyard, chasing each other around the swing set. He pictured Emily smiling warmly as she prepared dinner, her hair tied back in that casual bun she always wore when she cooked. These mental snapshots brought a faint smile to his face, even though deep down, he couldn't remember the last time he'd actually witnessed those scenes in real life. At the office, things moved forward as usual. Phones rang non-stop. Colleagues brushed past his cubicle, and meeting after meeting filled his schedule. By mid-afternoon, Mark found himself buried under a mountain of paperwork. His mind wandered again, this time to thoughts of what he might do if he ever managed to leave. Work early. Maybe he could surprise Emily by picking up flowers on the way home, or perhaps he'd stop by the grocery store to grab ingredients for a special meal. Just imagining her reaction made him feel lighter, almost hopeful. But then, something unexpected happened. Around 3 p.m., one of Mark's coworkers approached him with an unusual request. "Hey, Mark," the coworker said, looking slightly sheepish. "I know you've been pulling extra shifts lately, but I'm in a bit of a bind today. My kid has a school event and I can't miss it. Would you mind covering for me tomorrow? Instead, if you're okay with it, I'll take your shift now." Mark hesitated for a moment. Normally, he wouldn't consider leaving early. There was always more work to be done. Yet something inside him stirred, a mix of curiosity and longing. For once, he decided to say yes. "Sure," he replied, trying to sound casual despite the excitement bubbling beneath the surface. "I'll cover for you. Go ahead and take care of your family." As soon as the words left his mouth, Mark felt a rush of anticipation. Leaving early felt like a gift he hadn't expected, and he couldn't wait to see the look on Emily's face when he walked through the door hours before he was supposed to. He quickly finished up whatever tasks he could before grabbing his jacket and heading toward the parking lot. On the drive home, his mind raced with ideas. Should he bring dessert? Or maybe he'd suggest taking the kids to the park. Whatever he ended up doing, he knew it would be a welcome change from the monotony of recent months. When Mark finally turned onto his street, he slowed down, savoring the thought of surprising his family. The neighborhood looked peaceful, bathed in the golden glow of late afternoon sunlight. But as he pulled into the driveway, something caught his eye. A car he didn't recognize parked right outside his house. It was sleek and shiny, clearly not belonging to anyone in his immediate circle. A knot formed in his stomach as he stared at it, wondering who it could belong to. For a brief moment, Mark tried to shake off his unease. Maybe it was a friend of Emily's stopping by for coffee, or perhaps someone delivering something important. There were plenty of harmless explanations, he told himself. Still, the sight of that unfamiliar vehicle gnawed at him. He stepped out of his car, closing the door gently behind him, and listened closely. The house was eerily quiet. No giggles from the kids playing in the living room. No hum of conversation drifting through the windows. Something felt off. With growing apprehension, Mark unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The silence enveloped him like a thick fog, amplifying every creak of the floorboards beneath his feet. He called out softly, "Emily? Kids?" His voice echoed hollowly in the empty space. No response. The stillness was unnerving, and Mark's heart began to race. He moved cautiously toward the staircase, his footsteps hesitant. As he climbed the steps, the faint murmur of voices reached his ears. They were muffled but unmistakable, coming from upstairs. Each step felt heavier than the last, dread pooling in his chest. When he reached the bedroom door, it was slightly ajar. Through the narrow opening, he saw something that stopped him dead in his tracks. What unfolded next would haunt him forever. Peering through the narrow crack of the bedroom door, Mark's breath caught in his throat. His heart pounded so loudly that he was sure it would give him away. What he saw inside made the world around him blur. Emily, his wife, sat on the edge of their bed, her face streaked with tears. Her hands trembled as she clutched a tissue, twisting it nervously between her fingers. Across from her sat a man Mark didn't recognize. He was dressed neatly in a suit, his posture calm but deliberate. Papers were scattered across the bedspread, and one word stood out among them like a dagger: divorce. Mark froze, unable to process what his eyes were telling him. Divorce? The word felt foreign, impossible. How could Emily even be thinking about such a thing? His mind raced, trying to piece together the fragments of this surreal scene. Was this some kind of misunderstanding? A cruel joke? But no, the look on Emily's face said it all. She wasn't acting. Her pain was real. And yet here she was, sitting beside another man while discussing something that threatened to tear apart everything they had built together. The stranger leaned forward slightly, speaking in a low, soothing tone. "You don't have to rush into anything," he said gently. "Take your time to think things through. I'm here to help you make the best decision for yourself and the kids." Emily nodded weakly, wiping her cheeks with trembling hands. I don't know what else to do," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It's not fair to keep pretending everything is okay when it's not." Every word hit Mark like a punch to the gut. Pretending? Not fair? Those phrases echoed in his head, sharp and accusing. He wanted to barge into the room, demand answers, scream at the top of his lungs, but his body refused to obey. Instead, he stood rooted to the spot, paralyzed by shock and disbelief. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Mark found his voice, or rather, his anger did. Pushing the door open forcefully, he stepped into the room, his presence immediately silencing both Emily and the stranger. Their heads snapped toward him, eyes wide with surprise. For a moment, nobody spoke. The air seemed thick with tension, heavy enough to suffocate. "What the hell is going on here?" Mark demanded, his voice shaking with fury. His gaze darted between Emily and the man in the suit, searching for any clue that might explain the inexplicable. Emily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Mark," she exclaimed, her voice trembling. "What are you doing home?" "I asked you first," he shot back, his tone icy. "Who is this guy, and why are you talking about divorce?" Each word came out sharper than the last, slicing through the silence like a knife. The man in the suit stood up quickly, extending a hand toward Mark. "My name is Daniel," he said evenly, though there was a hint of unease in his expression. "I'm a lawyer. Your wife reached out to me regarding some legal advice." Mark ignored the offered handshake, his glare fixed firmly on Emily. "Legal advice? About what?" He spat, his voice rising. "About ending our marriage? Our family?" Daniel cleared his throat awkwardly, sensing the escalating tension. "Perhaps this isn't the best time to discuss this," he suggested diplomatically. "Maybe we should continue this conversation another day." "No," Mark barked, cutting him off. "You're not going anywhere until someone tells me what the hell is happening." Emily broke down then, tears streaming down her face as she sank back onto the bed. "I'm sorry, Mark," she sobbed. "I didn't want you to find out like this. I didn't know how to tell you." "Tell me what?" Mark pressed, his voice cracking under the weight of emotion. "That you've been planning to leave me behind my back? That you brought a lawyer into our house without saying a word?" It's not like that, Emily cried, her voice desperate. I haven't planned anything. I needed someone to talk to. Someone who could help me figure things out. I feel so lost, Mark. So alone. Her words pierced through his anger, leaving behind a deep ache. Alone? How could she feel alone when he worked himself to the bone every single day to provide for her and their children? Didn't she see how hard he tried? You think I don't care? Mark shouted, his frustration boiling over. Do you have any idea how much I sacrifice for this family? Do you think I enjoy coming home late and missing dinner with you and the kids? I do it because I love you, because I want us to have a good life. I know you try, Emily replied softly, her voice barely audible over her sobs. But trying isn't enough anymore, Mark. You're never here, not really. Even when you are, you're too tired to listen, too distracted to notice how unhappy I've become. I can't keep living like this. Her confession struck him like a thunderbolt, shattering whatever defenses he had left. Unhappy? Is that how she truly felt? Had he been so blind to her struggles that he hadn't seen the cracks forming in their relationship? Guilt washed over him, mingling with the anger and confusion swirling inside him. Daniel, sensing the raw vulnerability in the room, took a cautious step back. Look, I think it's clear that emotions are running high right now, he said carefully. Maybe it would be best if I left and let the two of you talk privately. Mark clenched his fists, torn between wanting answers and needing space to process everything. After a long pause, he nodded curtly. Fine, go. Without another word, Daniel gathered his papers and slipped out of the room, leaving Mark and Emily alone amidst the wreckage of their shattered trust. For several moments, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched endlessly, broken only by Emily's quiet sniffles and the distant hum of the clock ticking on the wall. When Mark finally broke the silence, his voice was softer, tinged with sadness rather than rage. Why didn't you say something sooner? He asked, his tone pleading. If you were feeling this way, why didn't you tell me? Emily looked up at him, her eyes red and swollen. Because I was afraid, she admitted. Afraid of hurting you. Afraid of making things worse. I thought maybe if I waited, things would get better on their own. But they didn't. They just kept getting harder. Mark sank onto the floor, overwhelmed by the enormity of it all. The woman he loved, the partner he trusted above all others, had been carrying this burden silently while he remained oblivious. In that moment, he realized that being present wasn't just about providing materially. It was about showing up emotionally, too. And somehow, somewhere along the way, he had failed to do that. As they sat there, surrounded by the remnants of their fractured lives, Mark knew one thing for certain. Fixing what had broken wouldn't be easy. But walking away wasn't an option, either. Whatever happened next, they would face it together, or risk losing each other forever. In the days that followed, Mark felt as though he were living in a fog. Every moment seemed surreal, like he was watching someone else's life unfold, rather than experiencing his own. The image of Emily sitting on their bed, tears streaming down her face, haunted him constantly. It replayed in his mind over and over again, her pain, her loneliness, the papers scattered across the bed with that one devastating word, divorce. He couldn't shake it no matter how hard he tried. Sleep eluded him. At night, he would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, his thoughts spiraling into endless loops of guilt and regret. How had he missed the signs? Had he really been so consumed by work that he failed to notice his wife slipping away? During the day, he moved through his routine like a ghost, mechanically completing tasks without any real sense of purpose. His co-workers noticed the change immediately. Gone was the dependable, hard-working Mark they knew. In his place was a man who seemed distant, distracted, and hollow. At home, things were worse. Emily avoided him entirely, staying at a friend's house with the kids. She hadn't said much after their confrontation upstairs, only that she needed space to think. Space. The word stung more than anything else. It wasn't just physical distance, it was emotional too. For the first time in years, Mark truly understood what it meant to feel alone. The house, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt cold and empty. Every corner reminded him of happier times, Times when Emily smiled freely, when the kids ran around shrieking with joy, when life felt whole. One evening, unable to bear the silence any longer, Mark decided to take matters into his own hands. He couldn't let Emily disappear from his life without fighting for her, for them. Picking up his phone, he scrolled through his contacts until he found her number. His thumb hovered over the call button, hesitating. What if she didn't answer? What if she told him it was too late? Summoning every ounce of courage, he pressed the button and held the phone to his ear. Each ring felt like an eternity. Just as he was about to hang up, her voice came through, soft and hesitant. "Hello?" "Emily," he began, his voice cracking, slightly. "It's me. Can we talk? Please?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Finally, she sighed. "Okay," she said quietly. "But not here. Meet me at the cafe downtown tomorrow afternoon." Relief washed over him. At least she hadn't shut him out completely. "Thank you," he whispered before ending the call. That night, for the first time in days, Mark slept soundly. Knowing he'd have the chance to speak with Emily gave him a glimmer of hope, a fragile thread to hold onto in the chaos. The next afternoon, Mark arrived at the cafe early. He chose a quiet corner table far from the bustling crowd and ordered 2 coffees. As he waited, his leg bounced nervously beneath the table. When Emily finally walked in, his breath caught in his throat. She looked different, tired, guarded, yet still beautiful in a way that made his chest ache. Her eyes scanned the room until they landed on him, and for a brief moment, their gazes locked. She approached cautiously, sliding into the seat across from him. Neither of them spoke right away. The air between them was thick with unspoken words, years of memories tangled together in a web of hurt and misunderstanding. Mark took a deep breath, breaking the silence. "I'm sorry," he said simply, his voice trembling. "For everything." Emily blinked, clearly taken aback by his directness. "Mark," she started, but he shook his head, cutting her off. "No, let me finish," he insisted. "I need to say this. I've spent so much time blaming myself, wondering where I went wrong. And the truth is, I did go wrong. I stopped paying attention. I stopped seeing you, really seeing you. I thought working harder, earning more money, providing for our family, that was enough. But it wasn't. Not even close." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she listened. "I know you love us," she said softly, "and I never doubted that. But love isn't just about providing, Mark. It's about being there, emotionally, mentally, physically. You weren't there anymore, not really, and I felt invisible." Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. Invisible. The very idea that Emily, the woman he cherished above all others, could feel unseen by him broke his heart in ways he hadn't thought possible. "I didn't mean to make you feel that way," he replied, his voice cracking. "I swear I didn't. I was so focused on giving you the best life I could that I forgot to give you the most important thing, myself." They sat in silence for a while, both lost in their thoughts. Finally, Emily reached across the table, her hand brushing against his. The gesture was small but meaningful. "I don't want to lose us," she admitted, "but I also can't keep pretending everything is okay when it's not. This isn't just about you working late or missing dinners. It's about communication, trust, connection, all the things we used to have but somehow lost along the way." Mark nodded, absorbing her words. "I understand," he said earnestly, "and I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. Whatever it takes to bring us back to each other." Emily studied him carefully, searching his face for sincerity. After a moment, she sighed. "I believe you," she said. "But rebuilding trust isn't going to be easy. We've both made mistakes, and we're going to have to work through them together. Are you ready for that?" "Yes," Mark replied, without hesitation. More than anything. With those 3 simple words, a spark of hope reignited between them. It wasn't a promise of perfection or an instant fix. It was the beginning of something new, something fragile, but full of potential. As they continued talking, sharing fears, frustrations, and hopes for the future, Mark realized that saving their marriage wouldn't happen overnight. It would require effort, patience, and countless difficult conversations. But for the first time in a long time, he felt optimistic. Together, they had taken the first step toward healing, and that was enough to keep moving forward. By the time they left the cafe, the sun was setting, casting a warm, golden glow over the city streets. Walking side by side, Mark reached for Emily's hand, intertwining their fingers. It was a small gesture, but it carried the weight of their shared commitment to fight, to grow, and to rediscover the love that had brought them together in the first place. The days that followed their meeting at the cafe were far from easy, but they marked the beginning of a fragile yet hopeful chapter in Mark and Emily's lives. Both of them knew that rebuilding their marriage wouldn't happen overnight. It required more than just apologies or promises. It demanded action, consistency, and an unwavering willingness to confront the pain they had both been avoiding for so long. Mark started by making small but significant changes in his daily routine. He cut back on work hours, something he never thought he'd do. For years, he had convinced himself that working longer meant providing better, but now he understood that being present mattered more than anything else. On his first day back home early, he walked through the door with a bouquet of flowers and a nervous smile. The kids greeted him excitedly, running up to hug him as if they hadn't seen him in weeks. Emily stood in the kitchen, watching silently as their children laughed and chattered around him. Her expression was guarded, but there was a flicker of warmth in her eyes, a sign that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. Determined to reconnect, Mark began spending quality time with the family every evening. Instead of retreating to his office after dinner to catch up on emails, he joined Emily and the kids in the living room. They played board games, watched movies, and even attempted baking cookies together, though the result was less than perfect. These moments weren't always smooth. There were awkward silences and lingering tensions, but they were real. And slowly, those shared experiences began to chip away at the walls between them. One weekend, Mark suggested taking everyone to the park, a place they hadn't visited in months. At first, Emily hesitated, unsure if she was ready for such a public outing as a family, but eventually she agreed, and they spent the afternoon flying kites, feeding ducks, and chasing each other across the grass. For the first time in what felt like forever, they laughed together genuinely. Watching Emily smile as their daughter tugged her toward the swings filled Mark with a sense of hope he hadn't felt in years. It reminded him of why they fell in love in the first place, their ability to find joy in the simplest things. Despite these positive steps, the road ahead remained rocky. Old habits die hard, and there were days when Mark slipped back into his old ways. One particularly stressful week at work left him snapping at Emily over something trivial, a misplaced file on the dining table. The argument escalated quickly, dredging up unresolved feelings from the past. Hurtful words were exchanged, and, for a moment, it seemed like all their progress might unravel. But this time, instead of retreating into silence or avoidance, they chose to face the issue head-on. That night, after the kids were asleep, they sat down in the living room to talk. "I'm sorry," Mark began, his voice heavy with regret. "I shouldn't have yelled at you earlier. I know I promised to be better, and I messed up." Emily nodded, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "It's not just about tonight," she said quietly. "It's about how we handle conflicts. We can't keep letting little things turn into big fights. If we're going to make this work, we need to learn how to communicate without hurting each other." Her words struck a chord deep within Mark. She was right. They couldn't move forward unless they addressed the root of their problems. With renewed determination, they decided to attend couples counseling. Neither of them had considered therapy before, but now it felt like a necessary step toward healing. Their first session was uncomfortable, filled with raw emotions and difficult truths. Yet as painful as it was, they both walked away feeling lighter, as though they had finally started untangling the knots that had bound them in resentment and misunderstanding. Through counseling, they learned valuable tools for communication. and conflict resolution. They practiced active listening, giving each other space to express their thoughts without interruption or judgment. They explored the underlying reasons for their disconnection: Emily's feelings of neglect, Mark's fear of failure, and the growing distance that neither of them had known how to bridge. Each revelation brought them closer, helping them see the cracks in their relationship not as failures, but as opportunities for growth. Outside of therapy, they made a conscious effort to nurture their connection. Date nights became a priority again, even if it was just a quiet evening at home with takeout and a movie. They rediscovered the art of conversation, talking about everything from their dreams for the future to their fears about parenting. Sometimes, they reminisced about the early days of their relationship, the excitement of falling in love, the thrill of planning their wedding, the overwhelming joy of becoming parents. Those memories served as reminders of the foundation they had built together, a foundation strong enough to withstand the storms they had weathered. As weeks turned into months, the changes became more noticeable, not just to them, but to everyone around them. Friends and family commented on how much happier they seemed, how their interactions were warmer and more genuine. Even the kids noticed the difference, often telling Mark and Emily how much they loved seeing them laugh together. Again, still, there were moments of doubt. Late at night, when the house was quiet and the weight of their struggles pressed heavily on their hearts, Mark would wonder if they were doing enough. Would their efforts be enough to heal the wounds they had inflicted on each other? Could they truly rebuild the trust that had been broken? Emily shared his fears but reminded him of one crucial truth. Love isn't about perfection, she said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. It's about choosing each other, even when it's hard, even when we mess up. As long as we keep choosing each other, we'll be okay. Her words stayed with Mark, anchoring him during the toughest moments. They weren't out of the woods yet, and perhaps they never would be completely. Relationships, after all, are works in progress, constantly evolving and requiring care. But they had taken the most important step. They had chosen to fight for each other, to believe in the possibility of a brighter tomorrow, and in that belief lay their greatest strength. Together, they were learning to navigate the complexities of love, forgiveness, and second chances. Though the journey was far from over, they faced it side by side, determined to create a future worth fighting for. Months had passed since that fateful day when Mark walked in early from work and discovered the truth about Emily's unhappiness. The journey they embarked on together wasn't easy. It was messy, painful, and full of moments that tested their resolve. But as time went on, the cracks in their relationship began to mend, not perfectly, but with a resilience neither of them thought possible. Slowly, they were rediscovering what it meant to be partners, not just in name, but in heart and action. Mark's commitment to change became evident in every aspect of his life. He no longer saw work as the sole measure of his worth or contribution to the family. Instead, he prioritized balance, carving out time for Emily and the kids without guilt or hesitation. On weekends, he organized little adventures, picnics at the park, trips to the zoo, bike rides along scenic trails. These outings weren't extravagant, but they brought back the laughter and connection that had been missing for so long. The kids loved having their dad around more, and Emily couldn't help but smile whenever she saw how much joy it brought them all. One Saturday morning, Mark surprised everyone by waking up early to cook breakfast. Pancakes, scrambled eggs, and fresh orange juice filled the kitchen with warmth and delicious aromas. "What's the occasion?" Emily asked, raising an eyebrow playfully as she sipped her coffee. "No occasion," Mark replied, flipping a pancake with a grin. "Just wanted to do something nice for my favorite people." The simplicity of the gesture touched Emily deeply. It reminded her of the small acts of kindness that used to define their relationship, the ones they had lost sight of over the years. As they ate together, sharing stories and giggling over silly jokes, the atmosphere felt lighter, freer. For the first time in a long while, it felt like home again. Their progress wasn't limited to fun activities or shared meals. They also tackled deeper issues head-on. Counseling sessions continued to play a vital role in their healing process. With the guidance of their therapist, they explored topics they once avoided, like Emily's feelings of isolation during Mark's long absences and Mark's fear of inadequacy if he didn't provide financially. By addressing these underlying emotions, they gained a better understanding of each other's perspectives. They learned to validate one another's experiences instead of dismissing them, creating a safe space where both could express vulnerability without judgment. One evening after a particularly intense therapy session, Mark and Emily sat on the couch reflecting on everything they had discussed. "Do you remember when we first met?" Emily asked softly, breaking the comfortable silence between them. Mark chuckled, leaning back against the cushions. "How could I forget? You spilled coffee all over my shirt at that cafe downtown." Emily laughed, covering her face with her hands. "Oh my God, I was so embarrassed. But you didn't get mad, you actually laughed it off and helped me clean it up. That's when I knew you were different." "I guess some things never change," Mark teased, nudging her gently. "You still manage to make a mess sometimes." They both laughed, the sound filling the room with warmth. But beneath the humor lay a profound realization. They remembered who they were before life's challenges pulled them apart. Those memories served as a reminder of why they fell in love in the first place and gave them hope for the future. As their bond grew stronger, Mark and Emily made a conscious effort to celebrate milestones, big and small. They marked their anniversary with a quiet dinner at their favorite restaurant, reminiscing about the highs and lows of their journey together. When their son won a school award for his science project, they cheered louder than anyone else in the auditorium. Even mundane achievements like finishing a tough week at work or completing a household chore were acknowledged with words of encouragement and appreciation. Through these efforts, they cultivated gratitude, not just for each other, but for the life they were rebuilding together. Gratitude became their anchor, helping them stay grounded during difficult moments. There were still disagreements, of course, but they handled them differently now. Instead of letting anger escalate into arguments, they paused, took deep breaths, and reminded themselves of the bigger picture, the love they shared and the family they were fighting to preserve. Their children noticed the shift too. One afternoon, while playing in the backyard, their daughter ran up to Emily and hugged her tightly. "Mommy, are you happy now?" she asked innocently. Emily knelt down, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "Yes, sweetheart," she replied, glancing at Mark standing nearby. "I'm very happy." It was a simple exchange, but it spoke volumes. Their kids thrived in the renewed energy of the household, sensing the love and unity that had returned. Family game nights became a weekly tradition. Bedtime stories turned into cherished rituals, and lazy Sunday mornings stretched into hours of cuddles and conversations. Life wasn't perfect, but it was whole, and that made all the difference. Looking back, Mark often marveled at how far they had come. He remembered the despair he felt when he realized how close they had been to losing everything. Yet here they were, stronger than ever, thanks to their willingness to confront their struggles and grow together. Emily echoed his sentiments one evening as they strolled hand in hand under the stars. "We've been through so much," she said, her voice tinged with awe. "But somehow, we're still here. Still us. That's because we chose to be," Mark replied, squeezing her. And I'll keep choosing you every single day." In the end, their story wasn't about avoiding mistakes or achieving perfection. It was about resilience, the ability to face pain, acknowledge faults, and choose love despite everything. Mark and Emily proved that even the most broken relationships can heal with patience, effort, and unwavering dedication. Together, they built a new foundation, one rooted in trust, communication, and mutual respect. And as they stood side by side, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, they knew one thing for certain: their love was worth fighting for.